Of all the legions shaped by the Emperor of Mankind during the first founding, none carried such a savage reputation as the warriors who would one day be known as the World Eaters, where other legions brought worlds into compliance through fear or struck swiftly and vanished. The assignment of these warriors meant only one outcome: not quiet surrender, not distant annihilation by virus or fire, but close and brutal extermination, carried out with chain axe and bolter until the ground itself seemed to drown in blood. The Emperor sought to bind all humanity beneath one banner after the long darkness of the Age of Strife. He intended to end the endless wars between scattered human realms and secure their future against chaos, alien empires, and the weaknesses of their own kind. To achieve this, he created the Legiones Astartes, transhuman warriors who would serve as the spear point of the Great Crusade and carry the light of the imperial truth to every human world they found. The origins of the 12th Legion are blurred by time and by the devastation of later wars. Records that survived speak only in fragments. There is no clear sign that their early recruits were drawn from any single tribe or city of Terra. Some believe that an experimental screening may have sought out those most aggressive and competitive, but the truth remains uncertain. What is certain is that from the very beginning, they were marked by ferocity, their warriors hot-blooded and savage. Among them rose Ibram Greer, a formidable candidate who became the Legion's first master. Their earliest recorded action came during the Safrak Liberation, where they served as shock troops, hurling themselves into open battle in fortified positions alike. Though still few in number, they advanced through sheer fury and relentless courage. After those early battles, the Legion was often held in reserve during the closing years of the Unification Wars and the reconquest of the Sol System. Perhaps they were kept ready in case fortune turned, or perhaps as a weapon against disloyalty. In readiness, they trained without pause, growing steadily in strength. When unleashed, they fought with an almost gleeful savagery, heedless of risk and indifferent to their own losses. It was during this era that the Emperor named them his Warhounds, recalling the white war beasts once used by the Yeshk warriors of northern Terra. After pacifying the narco-sprawls of the Cephalic hives, they adopted a red hound as their badge of war, a symbol of the tenacity and violence that defined them. As the Great Crusade advanced, and the first Primarchs were rediscovered across the galaxy, the 12th Legion was divided into independent subcommands, each numbering in the thousands. The largest of these, known as the Bloody 13th, carried roughly 8,000 warhounds and served as a mobile reserve where fighting was fiercest. They fought alongside the Space Wolves, the Iron Warriors, and the Dark Angels. Often they were sent to break deadlocks that others could not overcome, striking with such fury that a single assault could shatter an entrenched foe. Their reputation grew with every campaign. It was said that their attacks ended in only one of two ways: victorious slaughter or simple slaughter, and in either case the enemy was left unable to resist again. Yet their victories carried a cost. Those who served beside them found them unpredictable and dangerous, not only to enemies but to anyone caught in their path. rumor spread that human auxiliaries who faltered in battle were cut down by the warhounds themselves. Discipline within the Legion was harsh, perhaps because bloodshed between battle brothers was not uncommon. Gradually, the Imperial War Council began to see them as a force best used where annihilation was desired rather than careful liberation. They were gathered again under the banner of the Bloody 13th and mustered on the harsh volcanic world of Boat, which they had claimed as a training ground. There they stood alongside feral headhunters inducted into the Imperial Army. Bruted humans tolerated on the edge of Imperial law, the titans of the Legio Audax shadowed by suspicion, and the distrusted Newman gun clans who had once resisted compliance. Together, they formed a host suited not for restraint, but for devastation. Much of Angron's early life remains obscured. Scattered through the warp from the Emperor's laboratories beneath the Himalayan mountains, he came to rest upon the world of Nuceria, far from Terra. The true records of that world were later sealed, and even its location is uncertain, though many believe it lay within the Ultima Segmentum. Nuceria was a place of advanced craft and deep cruelty. Wealthy rulers, known as High Riders, lived in decadent towers, while the masses endured poverty in their shadow. To distract them, gladiatorial arenas were filled with cybernetically enhanced warriors who fought and died for spectacle. Angron was found in the northern mountains, surrounded by alien corpses, wounded yet alive. Some believe those aliens were Craft World Eldari, though certainty is lost. Taken as a slave, he was brought to the Palace Brexica and cast into a pit where acid burned below, and survival meant killing every other captive. When he stood alone atop the ziggurat, he was proclaimed a promising champion. Named Angron Thalkir, Child of the Mountain, he grew swiftly in size and skill. In the arenas, he became known as the Lord of the Red Sands and the Unbeaten. Though he slew hundreds, he spared those who fought well. Beneath the cheers of the crowd, resentment smoldered within him. He was mentored by Oino Mouse, an older gladiator who became as a father. Together they achieved great victories, including the defeat of Berserk Angron, fitted with the Butcher's Nails, crude neural implants that drove warriors into heightened fury. When the High Riders demanded the two fight to the death, Angron refused. As punishment, the Butcher's Nails were hammered into his own skull. The implants heightened strength and rage, rewarding violence with savage pleasure while stripping away reason and peace. Under their torment, Angron was forced to kill Oino Mouse. When clarity returned, despair consumed him. In time, he led a great escape. During vast games staged in the arena, his gladiators turned on their guards and fled into the mountains. They called themselves the Eaters of Cities. For years, they defied the rulers of Nuceria, until at last they were cornered upon the mountain of Fedin Moor, a Deshalica ridge, surrounded by overwhelming armies. It was then that the Emperor came. The Emperor had watched from orbit as Angron fought beside his fellow slaves. He descended with a small cadre of custodians and offered Angron command of the 12th Legion, forged from his own gene seed. Angron refused. He would not abandon those who had fought beside him. Knowing that his son would perish in the coming battle, the Emperor teleported Angron away against his will. From orbit, Angron watched as the Eaters of Cities were slaughtered to the last. Rage consumed him. He even struck down a custodian before the Emperor subdued him with psychic force. When Angron demanded to know why his comrades had not been saved, the Emperor spoke of a greater vision, of galactic unity beyond the fate of a single world. Angron replied that he had been meant to die with his brothers and sisters, and that only a ghost remained. His arrival among the Warhounds was marked by violence. Any who approached him risked death. During this time, the Legion Master, Ibram Greer, vanished from record, and it was said that Angron himself slew him along with other officers. At last, Captain Karn confronted his Primarch. Beaten nearly to death, Karn's refusal to yield impressed Angron. Through Karn's words, Angron saw echoes of his gladiators within his legion. He accepted command and renamed them the World Eaters, honoring the memory of the Eaters of Cities. From that moment, their path grew darker, their victories stained ever deeper with blood. Angron took full command upon the volcanic world of Boat. He was given unusual freedom, not required to shadow another Primarch or linger beside the Emperor. Instead, he reshaped his legion swiftly and without restraint. Training became indistinguishable from war. Live rounds and sharpened blades were used without hesitation. Fighting pits echoed with the clash of steel. Those who failed did not survive long enough to try again. Each warrior bore scars earned amid heat and ash. Believing in the power of his own implants, Angron ordered the apothecarian to place the butcher's nails within every Astartes. These relic devices of a lost age promised greater strength and fury, yet robbed their bearers of joy and peace beyond battle. The Legion's tech marines studied Angron's implants under his command, seeking to replicate them. Removing the originals would have killed him, and early attempts to copy them ended in total mortality. Under Apothecary Colin Serlac, volunteers died without exception. Still, Angron demanded that the work continue. In those early years, Angron refused to fully acknowledge his sons, judging them weak for failing to endure the implants. At one point, he abandoned them entirely, seizing a frigate and vanishing. It took 2 Terran years for Karn to find him upon a distant feral world, living like a savage and seeking death. Karn reminded him of Nuceria and of the fallen gladiators. Slowly, Angron returned to his legion, promising to lead them to shed weakness. Under his command, their legend grew so terrible that the whole star system surrendered at the mere sight of their fleet. The Liber Malus spoke of atrocities that chilled even hardened commanders. During the cleansing of Arigata, Rabut, Gilliman witnessed the carnage left at the basalt citadel and was sickened by the ramp of corpses used to breach its walls. Angron was named the Red Angel for the slaughter that followed him across the stars. He despised the title, for the Imperium already had an angel in Sanguinius, and Angron would not be mistaken for another. Though victories were many, the cost was dreadful. Angron demanded that conquered worlds fall within 31 solar hours, mirroring the span of his greatest triumph upon Nuceria. When the Legion failed to meet this limit, he ordered decimation. 1 in every 10 warriors was slain by his own brothers. This punishment returned again and again as deadlines were missed. During the campaign later known as the Second Compliance of Ghenna, the strain became unbearable for a veteran officer, and events moved toward open fracture. Ghenna had endured Old Night and survived in fragile form. Fewer than 1,000 true inhabitants remained, sustained within life pods. When contact was lost after peaceful compliance, Angron was sent to investigate. Negotiations failed when it was discovered that the population had altered themselves and relied upon an abominable intelligence. Angron demanded victory within 31 solar hours, or decimation would follow. Under Centurion Mago, a desperate landing was made. On the surface, they found billions of simulacrums, artificial constructs that appeared human, and overwhelmed the Legion through sheer numbers. Even as heavy support arrived, the deadline passed, and the World Eaters withdrew to the flagship Conqueror. Angron ordered decimation once more. Mago refused. In rage, Angron began slaughtering his own sons until the Legion's librarians subdued him at great cost. As he lay unconscious, Apothecary Golan Surlock revealed a method to implant the Butcher's Nails successfully by reverse engineering Ghennan technology. Karn became the first to receive the perfected implant. Soon 1,000 followed. When Angron awoke, he led them back to the surface. Surlock traced the command signals controlling the simulacrums to the life pods of the last true Ghennans. Their pleas for mercy went unanswered. Mago and his supporters attempted to halt the madness. In the end, Karn defeated Mago, who warned that the Legion would be damned. After the rebels submitted, the World Eaters scoured Ghenna clean in a single night. It was said that the psychic death screams were heard across half the sector. After Ghenna, the Legion was censured and ordered to end the implantation of the cortical devices. Layman Russ was sent to bring them to heel. The two legions met upon the fields of Malkoya beyond the Dead City. Angron stood bloodied, bearing his first axe. Widowmaker Russ faced him in armor like the storms of Fenris, wielding Krakenmaw. Words were exchanged, and authority was denied. No one knew who fired the first shot, yet soon both legions clashed without command. The battle came to be known as the Night of the Wolf. It was bloody and inconclusive, claimed as victory by both and feared as loss by each. In the end, the World Eaters did not return to Terra, and the implantation continued. Blood rites deepened. Skull-taking became a measure of pride. The results on the battlefield were undeniable, and for a time the Imperium turned a blind eye. Yet the Legion was already slipping into the shadow of the Blood God, and when Horus rose in betrayal, they would follow. By the dawn of the 31st millennium, the savagery of the World Eaters had grown beyond restraint. Many of Angron's brother Primarchs voiced their unease, yet the Emperor had already withdrawn to Terra. In his stead, he sent Horus, the one he trusted above all others to bring Angron back into the fold. But Horus had already been touched by the ruinous powers after Davin. When he looked upon Angron, he did not see a brother to be corrected. He saw a wound that could be widened. He spoke of betrayal on Nuceria, of abandonment, of weakness in the Emperor. Angron listened, and the bitterness within him found new fuel. When rebellion ignited, the World Eaters marched beside Horus without hesitation. They stood among the first traitor legions, joined by the Death Guard, the Word-Bearers, and the Sons of Horus. On Istvan III, treachery was made plain. Loyalists were virus-bombed from orbit, their deaths echoing in the warp like a scream that rivaled the Astronomicon itself. Yet many survived. Warned in time, they endured the firestorm. Angron descended in fury, defying Horus's careful design. He led company after company into the ruined city, seeking out his own loyal sons. The killing was intimate and merciless. For 2 full months the world burned, and when the skies cleared, orbital fire finished what fratricide had begun. The heresy had truly taken root. Elsewhere, Lorgar turned his wrath upon Ultramar. At Calth, the Word-Bearers struck deep, and the ruined storm was summoned to the eastern fringe. A monstrous warp storm split the void, cutting the Imperium in two. With Angron at his side, Lorgar drove a shadow crusade through the 500 worlds, leaving devastation in its wake. On Armatura, the Ultramarines answered with cunning. Buildings collapsed and Angron was buried beneath stone. His chain axes were ruined. One was cast aside, later recovered and repaired by Karn, who risked his Primarch's anger to preserve it. As the campaign dragged on, Lorgar saw that the butcher's nails were killing Angron. The implants gnawed at his mind, never meant for Primarch's flesh. Neural decay hastened. To save him, Lorgar led him back to Nuceria, promising vengeance and knowledge. Upon that broken world, Angron stood once more among the bones of his fallen gladiator kin. The memories were too heavy. The past, long buried, rose again beneath a silent sky. In Deshea, Angron learned how the slave masters had rewritten his story. They claimed he had fled in fear while his rebel brothers died. Rage answered that lie. He ordered the city destroyed, and then the world. Robot Gilliman arrived with a wounded armada, ships scarred from earlier battles. His flagship, Courage above all, led a fleet that struck hard despite its fractures. Broadsides roared in orbit as the Ultramarines sought to cripple the traitor vessels. The Fidelitas Lex endured a brutal exchange, its grand cathedral shattered under sustained fire. Gilliman resolved that it would be destroyed, while the Conqueror would be boarded and taken from within. In the void, ships drifted ablaze, too close for distant calculation. It was savage and immediate. Drop pods hammered into Nuceria's surface. Ultramarines veterans, their armor still scarred from Calth, advanced with cold determination. The World Eaters met them in storms of chain axes and howling fury. Word-bearers marched beside them, chanting black hymns beneath corpse-adorned icons. As the Fidelitas Lex fell from the sky in ruin, Guilliman found Lorgar. Their meeting was brief and violent. Power Fist struck against Crozius, and the air flashed with repelling energy. They fought amid the carnage of their sons, each blow carrying years of resentment. Guilliman's strike battered Lorgar's chest, yet the Word-Bearer answered with telekinetic force. The Crozius cracked against Guilliman's skull, and both bled beneath a gray and burning sky. Around them, war consumed all things. Through shattered ranks came Angron, armor ruined and blades dripping. Around his neck hung the skulls of the gladiators who had died on Deshalika Ridge. When one was crushed beneath Guilliman's boot, something deeper stirred. Lorgar felt the warp boil. He began to chant words never before spoken, calling upon the ruined storm. Blood rained from torn skies as Angron's body convulsed. Flesh burned and reshaped. In agony and wrath, he rose into demonhood. The remaining librarians of the World Eaters united their minds into a single psychic communion. They sought to pull his soul free and halt the ritual. For a moment, the warp trembled between them and Lorgar, but the communion faltered. Lorgar's will prevailed. The newly ascended Daemon Primarch turned upon the librarians, and none survived. The Librarius was erased, and Khorne was pleased. Guilliman escaped wounded and shaken. Mysaria was purged until no human life remained. From that day, Angron no longer walked as he once had. A skull throne awaited him aboard the Conqueror, and the black blade was forged to suit his new form. Later, when he ignored Horus's summons, Perturabo was sent to retrieve him. On Deluge, they clashed. Though Angron possessed terrible strength, Perturabo endured and outmaneuvered him with calculated bombardment. Words of slavery and fate struck deeper than steel. When an Ultramarine's fleet appeared, Angron conjured a warp storm. Fleets withdrew toward Alinor. In time, he would stand upon the battlements during the Solar War, fully given to Khorne and to his own endless thirst. To curb his rage before Terra, Angron was lured into the shifting labyrinth aboard the Nightfall. Crafted by Perturabo for Conrad Kersey, its corridors defied reason. Angron wandered its impossible turns, trapped within geometry that refused understanding. When the Emperor's barrier weakened, he was cast from the ship into space. He fell toward Terra like a blazing meteor, and his impact slew friend and foe alike. With the black blade in hand, he carved a path toward the Imperial Palace. At its walls, he saw Sanguinius. A challenge was roared, yet the angelic Primarch declined, promising that their battle would come another day. Frustration echoed across the battlefield. At the Lion's Gate spaceport, Angron destroyed mighty war engines, yet the palace still stood. When the final assault breached its walls, the World Eaters surged forward. Records claim it was the Black Blade that brought down the Great Gate. But victory slipped away. Reinforcements approached Terra, and Horus lowered the shields of the vengeful spirit, daring the Emperor to come. Their final duel ended with Horus slain and the Emperor interred upon the Golden Throne. The traitor host shattered. Angron was the last to leave, glancing back at the palace that had resisted him. He led his surviving warriors into the Eye of Terror, where a daemon world awaited. In time, the Legion fractured into wandering warbands, each driven by Khorne's endless demand for blood. After Horus fell, Angron and his warriors fought their way back to the Eye of Terror. There, on a daemon world shaped by Khorne, battle and blood were constant. At Scalathrax, the World Eaters clashed with the Emperor's children beneath freezing skies. Night forced a pause, and Khorne would not accept it. In fury, he turned his flamer upon his own brothers, cutting down any who sought shelter. Flames consumed the city. The Legion tore itself apart amid ruin and ice. From that day, unity was broken. Warbands replaced legions, and command belonged only to strength. Khorne walked the Eye of Terror as the betrayer, and few who fought beside him survived. In the mid-38th millennium, Angron led tens of thousands through Imperial space. For more than 2 centuries, over 70 sectors fell to his advance. In response, Space Marine chapters, Titan legions, and Astra Militarum regiments united in a vast crusade. Most of the lost territory was reclaimed, though at great cost. Imperial archives remember this long struggle as the Dominion of Fire. Within the Eye of Terror, rivalries briefly stilled when the space hull, the Devourer of Stars, drifted near Angron's daemon world. It became the vessel for a great invasion. In the year 444 of the 41st millennium, chaos forces emerged in the Armageddon system. Rebellion already simmered on the Hive world, fed by cultists and warp storms. Angron descended with cultists, demons, and the 12. Half the planetary defenders turned traitor. The rest fell back toward the river Styx and Jagon. Yet the warp storm weakened, and Angron halted to raise monuments of skulls, securing the energy needed to sustain his demonic host. When he advanced again, he found the defenders reinforced. Logan Grimnar had summoned the Grey Knights. They teleported into the heart of the Horde, surrounding the Daemon Primarch. Battle was brutal. Squadcastian was shattered. Hyperion, a master of psychic flame, shattered the Black Blade before collapsing. Brother Captain Aurelian banished Angron, giving his life in the act. Only 13 Grey Knights survived. Hyperion endured stasis and augmetic reconstruction, earning the name Bladebreaker. With Angron cast back into the warp for more than a century, the Space Wolves launched their counterattack. Chaos forces broke under the loss of their leader. Only the World Eaters managed to retreat aboard the Devourer of Stars and flee into the warp. The victory was decisive, though dearly bought. After the birth of the Great Rift, warp storms engulfed Armageddon. Demons of Sinch and Khorne battled openly, reshaping half the world into a nightmare reflection of a daemon world. When travel was restored, Imperial forces led by the Salamanders halted a ritual meant to return Angron. Now, in the era Indomitus, Angron's presence in real space is more persistent. Should he be banished, he returns after 8 weeks, 8 days, and 8 hours, heralded by 8 crimson omens. warbands once divided have gathered again. Some, like Gladiator Caedere 331, still wear the blue and white of old. Others, such as the Void Butchers or the Patient Bloodstalkers, fight in their own manner. With Angron at their head once more, the World Eaters stand ready to shape the great game anew, and the Imperium watches with unease. The World Eaters care for one thing above all else, and that is the thrill of slaughter. Even if they were to cleanse and sanctify their war gear after every engagement, as loyalist Space Marines might, it would be coated again within solar minutes, thick with the sticky, clotted lifeblood of their victims. Wherever they walk, whatever foe stands before them, their deep crimson battle blade gathers another layer of arterial red, and then another, until it is impossible to see where armor ends and blood begins. Each fresh spray of gore, each splash of vital fluid, is offered as a sacrament to Khorne. Before Angron's legion turned upon their brothers at the Istvan 5-drop site massacre, they wore stark white and deep blue. At least, that was the intention. In truth, during the Great Crusade, they brought worlds into imperial compliance with such violence that their armor was rarely free of blood. Their brother legions noticed, and they remembered. Among the warrior elite who stand now, many fought at Angron's side. The waves of unnatural energy that radiate from the Daemon Primarch leave marks upon both body and soul. To kill within Angron's sight is considered a blessing surpassed only by that of Khorne himself. Those who truly earn his favor may receive nothing more than a nod of respect or a low growl of recognition, yet even that is treasured in the heat of battle. The Berserkers favor weapons meant for close and brutal work. Of these, the chain axe is most beloved. Its grinding teeth whirl around the blade with such force that armor can be gnawed apart and even rockcrete can be hacked through. When those teeth find flesh beneath, the destruction is catastrophic, and the offering to Khorne is complete. First as the Warhounds, and later as the World Eaters, the Legion wore white power armor marked with blue upon the shoulder blades and parts of the power pack. Many of them altered this armor with large spikes rising from the shoulders, shapes meant to inspire fear and to turn the very surface of the plate into a weapon. A brazen helm marked a veteran. Over time, as they surrendered fully to bloodlust and to the corrupting influence of the blood god, their white and blue heraldry gave way to blood red and brass, the favored colors of Khorne. Even so, fragments of the old colors can still be found upon individual suits of armor, remnants of what they once were. Most retain their original Legion badge, yet it is often joined by the Mark of Khorne and other Chaos symbols, including the Star of Chaos. In battle, they almost always wield chain axes and chain swords, tools chosen to spill as much blood as possible. Among the most powerful warriors, some turn to arcane power or demonic ornate weapons infused with the essence of a demon of the blood god. Since the end of the Horus Heresy, other renegade space marines have embraced Khorne and taken on the look of the World Eaters. Still, few can match the experience forged through thousands upon thousands of battles fought across 10,000 standard years. What was once the galaxy's most effective shock assault force has become a gathering of savage berserkers and unhinged killing machines who live only to spill blood and take skulls for corn. In the days when they were known as the Warhounds, the Legion bore a badge of a large red hound rampant upon a field of white. The image echoed the name given to them by the Emperor himself, who saw in them the likeness of the white warhounds once used by the Yeshk warriors in the north of Terra. After their reunion with Angron and their rebirth as the World Eaters, the symbol changed. It became a great red-fanged maw, poised to crush a life-bearing world set against a field of dark blue. The image proved fitting. It spoke plainly of their name and of the brutal violence they inflicted upon those who would not accept the tenets of the imperial truth or allow themselves to be drawn into the Imperium. With their corruption, many legionaries began to mark their power armor with Khorne's stylized skull rune, painted or carved into the plate. Some of the Khornate berserkers wear a variant of the old icon, the fanged maw devouring a planet, now laid over the 8-pointed star of chaos, a final sign of where their allegiance truly lies. The name of the world where Angron was raised has faded into silence. Long ago, it was known as Nuceria, but that name now drifts through history like a whisper barely remembered. During the Great Crusade, the Legion did not return there. Instead, they used a different world called Bot, shaping it into a place of training for new recruits over many solar decades. It became a proving ground, steady and purposeful in its role. Then, in the early days of the Horus Heresy, long before the Siege of Terra, the Legion was drawn away to obliterate a single world under Angron's command during what came to be known as the Shadow Crusade. Whether that world was truly his birthplace is not known. Many believed it was the same soil where he had once lived in chains. As the heresy unfolded, Angron ordered the destruction of other worlds as well. The choices seemed almost without pattern, as if guided only by fury. Now, unlike the other traitor legions, the World Eaters are not known to claim any world within the demonic realm of the Eye of Terror, the place the traitors call home. It is said this is because they are no longer a single, unified force. They have broken apart into many war bands of Khornate berserkers, scattered across the galaxy, each moving in search of slaughter, bound by blood and rage, but not by any lasting command. Many have long suspected that Angron's gene seed was flawed from the very beginning, and that the World Eaters were condemned the moment they first drew breath. Others look instead to the known history of Angron himself, and quietly wonder whether his legion might have been saved, if only the warning signs had been seen sooner. Whatever the truth may be, the Space Marines of the World Eaters carry within them a relentless need to shed blood and to kill. It is not a passing urge, but a driving imperative that consumes them. It rises like a tide inside their minds, pushing them into a berserk fury, into a state of unrestrained and bloodthirsty psychosis. The desire is so powerful that when no enemy stands before them, they will turn upon one another to satisfy it. In the absence of an external foe, their own brothers become the only answer to that gnawing hunger. The name names of the World Eaters tend to strike the ear with weight. They are often short, built from 1 or 2 syllables, shaped by hard consonants that carry the harsh echoes of the warriors drawn into the ancient legion from many corners of the galaxy. There is a blunt strength to them, something direct and unsoftened. Among the heretic Astartes of the World Eaters, a name is not always enough on its own. Many carry a byname earned or taken, drawn from some defining mark. It might rise from a physical trait, a quirk of temperament, a deed long remembered, or a favored method of killing. Sometimes it is simply the feature by which others know them best. In these names you can hear it clearly. Barask Draxiger, Cargos Bloodgrin, and Gerax Axifist carry a certain rhythm, heavy and grounded. Goron Cruel and Vara Gorgath speak with the same sharp edge. Zagrek the Headsman and Drosk Bloodhair bear titles that linger in the mind, as do Darvok the Reaper and Dragagor. Nerax the Mimer, Maser Karos, and Sarvok the Butcher follow that same brutal cadence. Beric the Reaper stands beside Gorek the Hound, and Asgore Hagon closes the line, each name a compact declaration of identity, forged in violence and remembered through sound. The Warhounds were feared for their ferocity, yet they believed they fought with honor. To them, life was war from cradle to grave, and the Legaines Astartes embodied that truth in its purest form. Failure was not tolerated. Surrender was unthinkable. Mercy was a swift death granted to a brave foe, while cowards earned only butchery. This brutal code was their faith, applied to themselves as readily as to any enemy. When they were reunited with their Primarch upon Nuceria, everything began to change. Angron's Nucerian beliefs and blood rites seeped into the Legion, reshaping it. The martial traditions of old Terra, never deeply rooted among the Warhounds, faded away. In their place rose Angron's red code of savage competition and butchery. The newly named World Eaters left bought beneath the image of a great fanged maw poised to crush a living world, a symbol that would prove fitting. Angron brought with him a primitive unity, almost tribal in nature. He became the image of warriorhood to which all aspired. He was the only Primarch to refuse the Emperor's benevolence, turning his back on conquest and glory. He had wished only to die beside the rebels who had fled the Gladiator Pits of Deshea with him, those brothers and sisters who waited in the mountains among carrion birds and snow bears, prepared for starvation or battle. The legionaries learned of his defiance and did not resent him. They worshipped him for it. To them, no Primarch understood brotherhood more deeply than one who would forsake the Imperium itself to stand beside his kin. Angron became a savage messiah in their eyes, a wrathful and mutilated figure who displaced their former loyalty to the Emperor. He became their judge and their general, the banner they would follow even into hell. Under his influence, their restless aggression found direction. Gladiatorial combat, often fatal, became the heart of their training and the outlet for their bloodlust. The butcher's nails, implanted within their skulls, amplified their hunger for battle. Bloodletting rituals grew common. warriors cut their left hands and smeared their blood upon their visors before entering combat. As the years passed, these rites deepened. Blood became central to their identity. In time, when the corrupted War Master Horus turned them toward chaos, their savage customs flowed easily into the worship of the blood god Khorne. Like other legions, they once took oaths before battle. Each warrior spoke vows to his brothers, declaring what he would do for the Emperor, for the Legion, and for himself. Some legions wrote their promises upon parchment and wore them upon their armor. Angron introduced something different. He showed Captain Karn the tradition of the triumph rope. Before battle, a warrior carved a line into his own flesh. Afterward, he allowed it to heal cleanly if he had been victorious, forming a red twist. If he had been defeated, he pressed battlefield soil into the wound, creating a black twist. In this way, scars became records of honor and prowess. Angron bore the longest triumph rope. It began at the base of his spine and wound across his body, looping over hip and ribs, spiraling toward his chest. In places, it thinned or vanished where his healing had overcome it. It ended just past the right of his sternum. It was said he had no black twists. When the Emperor spirited him away on the eve of battle, he was denied the chance to return and claim the soil of his world. Unable to mark his failure, he carried bitterness instead, a wound that could not be commemorated. The Gladiatorial Pits endured from the days of the Warhounds into the era of the World Eaters. Once they had symbolized brotherhood. Warriors from distant worlds were chained together and forced to fight as pairs, learning that trust was forged in shared violence. Rank meant nothing within the pits. There was no pageantry. Only weapons and reflexes mattered. Combatants agreed beforehand how many wounds would decide victory. Most fought to first blood, sometimes to second or third. Rarely they fought to sanguis extremis, a death bout. Their nature was ambitious and quick to anger. Slights were answered with blood. Disputes between brothers were settled in the arena. Brawling outside it was rare, for honor demanded that such conflicts end in death. Scars webbed their bodies from chain axes and blades. Many replaced shattered teeth with metal prosthetics, so common that other legions spoke of never meeting a world eater without at least one metal tooth. When squads were destroyed and leadership had to be chosen, the pits often decided the matter. Even breeders sometimes relented, knowing that bleeding together restored a measure of grounded calm and renewed trust. Before the Horus Heresy, their armor was white and unadorned, save for chains binding weapons to wrists. The custom came from the pits, where warriors chained themselves together and fought naked, but for loincloths, proving they feared no wound and stood as equals. The practice spread beyond the legion. Sigismund, first captain of the Imperial Fists, embraced it with zeal. Within the Conqueror, he dueled alongside the World Eaters, earning the name Black Knight. Often paired with Delvarus of the Triarii, he won every bout to first blood in moments too swift for others to match. Nasir Amit of the Blood Angels known as the Flesh Terror, also gained renown in those pits. Fighting with the savagery of his hosts, he and the apothecary cargoes, called the Blood Spitter, were feared opponents. Their matches rarely stopped at first blood, and often reached sanguis extremis. No trick was beneath them, and death was common. Honor among them lay, not in titles, but in scars and marks that spoke of fury. The sundered chain signified survival against overwhelming odds, echoing Angron's history. A bloody handprint placed upon face or heart marked a warrior whose rage surpassed his brother's. Those who bore the blood hand cared nothing for past glory, striving instead to embody fury until death surrounded them. The fanged maw badge upon armor marked long service. Red striations upon a helm echoed the implantation of the butcher's nails. Red tears beneath eye lenses suggested ritual scarification. Dolly marks cut into vambrace or weapon recorded kills, and a crossed chain decoration signified that a warrior had slain a higher-ranked brother in a sanctioned duel. Angron revived the Caedere Weapons, inspired by the ritual arms of the cyber-augmented gladiators of his savage homeworld. They were brutal and difficult to master, favored by the rampagers who responded most strongly to the cranial berserker implants. Among these weapons were the meteor hammer and the excoriator chain axe. Warriors also wielded twin Felk's blades and the barb hook lash, tools of relentless and intimate violence. Many warriors wore the snarling serum pattern helmet. As the heresy approached, some modified these helms with the twin mantles of the Caedere Remissum, an honor born of Angron's gladiatorial traditions. The bladed horns marked a warrior judged too unstable for anything but death matches, serving as warning to all who faced him. Though Angron forbade them among his veteran companies, many risked his anger. In time, the stylized mantles became synonymous with the ornate berserker cults after his ascension. Head-taking became another grim tradition. Squad members, entire squads, and even companies competed in gruesome contests. It may have served as proof of kills, yet Imperial scholars believed the head itself held deeper meaning for the Legion. Whether the tally of collected skulls marked a single battle, an entire war, or a warrior's lifetime was never clearly known. There was once a tradition called the Mortus. It was an official report listing fallen battle brothers. More than a simple casualty list, it was remembrance, a roll of honor preserved upon scrolls, brass plaques, or stone. These names were entered into the ship's archive of the fallen. Other legions had their own terms, such as the Dirge of the Thousand Suns or the Lamentation of the Sons of Horus. As rage consumed the World Eaters and madness became constant, they abandoned the Mortus. The names of the dead faded, left unrecorded. Now there remains only one belief: the spilling of blood. They exist to kill, to shed blood in their god's name. It matters little whose blood flows, foe, ally, or their own. What endures is the growing pile of skulls laid before the brass throne of Khorne. Even before they took the name of the Warhounds, the warriors of the 12th Legion favored the closeness of hand-to-hand combat. This did not mean they were lacking in ranged fire or armored assault. Ferrus Manus once praised their armored charge at Aldebaran Septus as the very shape of ironclad rage, yet such tactics were only a path toward what they truly desired. They wished to bring their space marines within reach of the enemy, where blades could rise and fall at close quarters. Across the ranks, combat knives and gladius were common. Even those assigned to reconnaissance or vehicle crews carried chain blades, flay cutters, mono-serrated bayonets, and backup knives, hatchets, and cleavers. In assault units, the broad-bladed chain axe joined this grim collection, a weapon drawn from the techno-barbarian tribes of Terra. When Angron came to command them, their appetite for personal combat deepened. The master gladiator taught new ways to kill, and a cult of individual battle settled into the Legion's core. Under his guidance, the chain axe was refined, its reputation spreading beyond the Legion itself. It stood as a symbol of the World Eaters, brutal and remorseless, a machine shaped for a single purpose. Their planetary assaults followed a pattern unlike other legions. Drop pods struck the surface, gunship ramps fell, and perimeters formed with swift discipline. Recon squads ranged outward, communication lines secured, companies gathering until the advance was called. Where others fought in silence or with wild laughter, the Warhounds chose another path. They approached their foes walking. No robotic stillness, no frenzied shouting, only the calm voices of bonded brothers speaking as though bound for training pits. Rarely did they quicken their step. Almost never did they run. They marched with steady aggression, their stride unbroken as they struck, rolled through resistance, and crushed whatever stood before them. Fear often broke the enemy before the blades even fell. Only when the foe turned to flee did the Legion give chase, then running them down like true hounds of war. After the butcher's nails were implanted, that measured discipline faded. The shield wall and ordered phalanx fell away. Now they ran from the moment of planetfall, speeding toward the promise of slaughter. At the sight of the enemy, they surged faster still, minds burning with the nails. When they clashed, nothing slowed them. Each warrior pressed forward, hacking and tearing, never pausing to admire a kill. Loose packs dissolved into solitary storms of violence, every legionary following the nails wherever they led. Vox channels filled with disjointed laughter and screams beneath the growl of active chain blades. Ammunition ran dry, bolters clicked hollow. They welcomed the sound, casting the guns aside to kill with their hands alone. The nails drove them higher into brutality, tearing down hold-fast doors and swarming inside until nothing remained but a blood-soaked ruin marking their passing. In later days, the World Eaters carried a single desire: to slay in savage melee and claim skulls for corn. Long-ranged weapons were cast aside, replaced by the chain axe favored by their god and the bolt pistol held close in the offhand. Their hunger for blood grew into an overpowering addiction. When battle began, the Legion, now transformed into Khornate berserkers, rushed forward roaring the name of Khornate, strategy forgotten beneath the weight of fury. They fought without fear of death, knowing their own blood pleased the blood god as surely as that of their enemies. Organization frayed after the Horus Heresy. Engagement often meant little more than driving a mass of berserkers straight at the enemy line, closing the distance as quickly as possible. Once locked in melee, few could endure their ferocity. Though they possessed little in the way of long-range fire, they relied on their unmatched prowess in close combat. Some artillery remained, gifts granted by Khorne himself, and for those who sought deeper devotion, darker paths opened. Through grim rituals, a warrior might invite possession by a demon of the warp, claimed by a lesser daemon of the blood god, such as a bloodletter, his body twisted into a living weapon known as a possessed. In this union, blood and skulls were gathered more swiftly, while the demon gained a mortal anchor in real space, bound to the endless harvest of war. The Banner of Rage is said to hold the bound souls of the most bloodthirsty servants of Khorne. Those who stand near it can feel the anger rolling outward in heavy waves. It presses against the mind, urging slaughter, until restraint becomes thin and fragile. There is also the Berserker Glaive, an unnaturally heavy weapon steeped in demon presence. Its red-hot steel drives its bearer into wild fury. Even among the World Eaters, he is shunned as a dangerous maniac, though they venerate him from a careful distance. Bloodletters are bound within the weapon, and as it drinks the life of those it cuts down, it feeds its host. Wounds close, strength endures, and the killing can continue for solar weeks without rest. Bloodfeeder is another blade that embodies Khorne's indifference to the source of blood. Those struck by it are emptied at once, their lifeblood drawn away and reduced to a withered husk. The stolen essence is carried to the lakes of gore around Khorne's brass stockade, sustaining his juggernaut daemon beasts. If denied its harvest for too long, the weapon will turn on its own wielder without hesitation. Bloodhunger is not a blade, but a suit of power armor that lives in union with its wearer. Together they crave red viscera taken in battle. When that craving is satisfied, injuries mend and damage fades. A champion of Khorne bound to this artifact becomes a creature of shared appetite, pressing forward until no foe remains to quench their thirst. The brass collar of Borgester is heavy and cruel in its design. Within it is bound a greater daemon of Khorne, who despises magic with burning hatred. Any psyker who dares to draw upon eldritch power nearby feels sudden agony in the mind. The energies he summons are hurled back upon him in white-hot flame. Those who fall are dragged into Khorne's realm, where Borgaster's blades claim them again and again. Crimson Killer, an ornate plasma pistol, releases blasts of crimson fire that burn flesh and soul together. Its bearer often follows the searing strike with a swift blow to take a head, claiming the blackened skull for Khorne. Gorefather, an immense chain axe once wielded by Angron himself, carries a legacy of violence. Though it was cast aside, it returned to prominence, sustained by sacred oil and spiced blood. rival war bands have waged wars to possess it. In strong hands it scythes through enemies, leaving only shattered bodies and sprays of blood. The Helm of Furor marks a champion who has abandoned all loyalty except to bloodshed and victory. Within the helm, a spiteful machine spirit stirs, driving the butcher's nails implant to deeper frenzy. Sanity erodes as the bloodlust rises. And there is the talisman of burning blood, forever dripping thick, bubbling gore. The air around it reeks of the slaughterhouse. Those who breathe it in feel their restraint loosen, then they surge forward with unnatural eagerness, desperate to spill blood and quiet the hunger that grows within. At its creation, the 12th Legion followed the Terran pattern of organization set down by the Imperial Officio Militaris at the dawn of the Great Crusade. Even then, there was a clear preference for direct assault, for fighting in the tight and deadly spaces known as Zone Mortalis. When Angron took command, the structure remained largely intact, though it became leaner, more focused on line infantry, ready to close with the enemy. Most formations blended tactical squads with close assault troops, supported by heavy assault units in Terminator armor and fast-moving land speeder squadrons. It was an arrangement built for aggression. Casualties were high, yet the results were undeniable. Angron kept the rank structure simple. He scorned titles and hollow honors, refusing even to be called Lord, though he valued a clear chain of command in war. The old warhounds had enforced discipline harshly, and their tempers were already quick to rise. Command was earned in battle, proven by strength and leadership at the front line. No rank was spared from the expectation of violence. An apothecary or an artillerist would fight as fiercely as any line warrior, and to disobey an order in battle meant death without delay. Trial by combat became the chosen way to settle disputes. Bloodshed between rivals was not shameful. It was accepted, even honored. After the betrayal at Istvan III, the Legion grew more insular and harder to control. The use of psychosurgery spread further, and new recruits were implanted with the butcher's nails as a matter of course. Infantry assaults supported by swift armor had always defined them, but now the goal was often slaughter for its own sake. At that time, their strength was believed to be around 150,000 warriors, and they were well supplied, supported by the Legio Audax Titan Legion and a fleet of at least 60 capital vessels. Of all the traitor legions at Istvan III, it was said that the World Eaters suffered the greatest losses, with well over 35,000 dead. Some were so consumed by bloodlust that they had to be chained and taken back to the fleet. Among their elite stood the Devourers, 12 warriors in Terminator armor who served as Angron's bodyguard. Entry was gained only by killing a Devourer in single combat or surviving a deadly contest if one fell in battle. There were Rampager squads as well, near berserk warriors altered by dangerous cortical implants, some becoming the Caedere, the butchers, restrained between battles, others mastering savage gladiatorial weapons. On Istvan III, those who lost all control were remade as the Red Butchers, sealed within customized Terminator suits that served as both armor and prison. hung in chains within the holds of their ships. Those marked with the Blood Hand, the Butcher's Mark, formed the Red Hand squads within the destroyer companies, seeking ever greater proof of their ferocity. The destroyers themselves wielded rad weapons, bioalchem munitions, and the horror of phosphex, tools that scorched and tainted the ground. Shunned by many, they were nonetheless indispensable when the hardest defenses needed to be broken. 5 full companies, known as the Triari, guarded the flagship Conqueror, masters of void warfare and boarding actions under Centurion Delveris, the Legion's pit-fighting champion. Attrition within the Legion was relentless. Recruits died in training at rates believed to be the worst of any Legion. Contests became lethal with live rounds and sharpened blades, for only the strongest would be judged worthy. To sustain constant war, recruitment was accelerated and drawn from feral and feudal worlds across the Imperium. Individual combat skill was prized, yet companies and battalions also clashed in grand exercises beneath Angron's gaze. Even so, it was always the true battlefield they desired. Before Angron's rediscovery, the Warhounds had maintained a laborious division of potent psychers, but across the Imperium, psychic power had become a matter of fierce debate. Some Primarchs accepted it, while others such as Lyman Russ and Mortarion rejected it as dishonorable sorcery. The Emperor convened the Council of Nicaea in the first year of the 31st millennium. There, psychic excess was condemned. Librariums were ordered disbanded, and librarians returned to the ranks under oath. By then, the newly named World Eaters had already turned away from their psychic brethren. Non-psychic warriors spat at their feet, echoing a superstition from Nuceria. Angron mistrusted anything unnatural, and in the presence of psychers his neural implants caused him great pain. Driven by belief in his own implants, he commanded his tech marines to replicate the Butcher's nails. Early attempts were disastrous, bringing death and frenzy to test subjects. Yet over time, a workable form was achieved, and the nails were placed within most of the Legion. The implants did not grant gifts. They stripped reason and caution, rewarding rage with chemical pleasure. Soon, it became clear that librarians suffered terribly from them. Migraines and bleeding afflicted those nearby. In battle, implanted psychers lost control. One unleashed witch lightning until 3 squads were burned to ash. Others burst apart in fire and gore. Within a single solar month, almost every librarian had been implanted, and weeks later they began to die in growing numbers. They tried to master the devices through willpower, but storms of power consumed them. Some perished by projecting pain through the implants of their brothers, causing strokes and hemorrhages. Angron offered execution or removal of the nails, yet removal was impossible. The Emperor's own magi had failed to extract them from Angron himself. Most librarians chose the attempt at removal and died without exception. Those who had not yet received the nails lingered in the near-empty halls of the Librarius aboard the Conqueror. One by one they fell, not to malfunction, but to the brief and violent life of a World Eater. Their gene seed was left unharvested lest the psychic curse return. Vorias, eldest of the remaining coven, and Lectio Primus, worked with the Apothecarian and Mechanicum Magi to understand why the nails reacted so poorly to psychic minds. The research was abandoned. Too many loyal warriors had died, and no one truly cared. The sense of brotherhood faded. The librarians knew their presence caused pain. They understood that Angron never planned for their gifts. They called themselves warhounds still, left behind as the Legion changed. By the beginning of the Horus Heresy, only 19 librarians remained. They formed a quiet coterie, sharing silent communion between their minds. Their fate was sealed on Nuceria. During the Shadow Crusade, Robut Gilliman shattered one of the skulls that hung from Angron's breastplate. Angron's howl shook the air. Lorgar felt the warp surge and began chanting, summoning the ruin storm and calling the Neverborn. As Angron's body tore and burned, he rose in terrible apotheosis. The 19 librarians joined their power into a single entity known as the Communion and pulled Angron's soul from his body. In the warp, they confronted Lorgar, each believing they sought to save him. They failed. When Angron emerged as a Daemon Prince, he turned upon them and slew the last of his psychic sons. The Librarius was ended, and Khorne was pleased, for among his servants there would be no psychers, only blood carried on endless slaughter. Banished to the Eye of Terror and bound to Khorne, the Legion's rituals of blood deepened. Oceans were spilled in his name. The old tactical order dissolved through years of killing. Officers and champions became possessed or rose as chaos champions, and discipline faded into frenzy. On the night of madness upon the demon world of Scalathrax, Kharn turned upon his own legion. In a single day of slaughter, the World Eaters shattered into roaming warbands. Some were lone champions, others small squads, others still great companies capable of terrible ruin. They would fight beside any Chaos Lord who promised battle, though even such a lord risked losing his head to their hunger. True to Khorne's creed, they kept no sorcerers. During the heresy, librarians in other legions gained new powers through devotion to the ruinous powers, yet the World Eaters offered theirs as sacrifice. They were hunted and slain by their own brothers. The killing reached its height when Skirak the Slaughterer cut down the Legion's chief librarian, clearing the final path to the Eightfold Path and to the Skull Throne. During the Horus Heresy, the fleet of the World Eaters moved through the void like a storm that had already chosen its path. Many of those warships would still drift among the stars 10,000 years later, scattered among warbands that carried the Legion's fury into distant ages. At the heart of it all was the Conqueror, a Gloriana-class battleship that served as the flagship of the Primarch Angron and the 12th Legion during the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy. Its presence defined the fleet immense and relentless. Alongside it sailed vessels such as the Justified Aggressor and the Merciless, the latter taking part in the Battle of Istvan III at the onset of the rebellion. The Skullsail and the Slaverer also bore the Legion's wrath into the dark, and the Slaverer would later fight in the 13th Black Crusade as part of the fleet of Abaddon the Despoiler. Attacking the Forge world of Agrippina, and engaging the Imperial Navy battleship, the Throne's Divine Demands, though its final fate was never known. Other ships met their end in violent brilliance. The Iculum, a battle barge of the Horus Heresy era, fought in the Battle of the Diavanos system and was consumed in the explosive destruction that also claimed its brethren, the Galeras and the Clavum. The Infestus struck down 2 Ultramarines warships in that same battle before it too was destroyed. When the flagship Gladiator was left stricken under Ultramarines' fire, the Bringer of Ruin took command of what remained of the fleet, yet even that resolve could not prevent total annihilation. The dedicated Wrath had already tasted the drop site massacre under the command of Lieutenant Commander Nye Vashdalarax, and vessels such as Gat's Charge and the Industrious were present in the Istvan system during those bitter early days. Cruisers and escorts carried their own grim stories. The aggression fought in the conflict that engulfed the Pyrrhus Reach sector. The Blood's Wake moved through the void with silent purpose. The jaws of the White Hound served the 15 Fangs warband, while the Skulltaker became the flagship of Karn the Betrayer and the Butcher Horde, ultimately sacrificed in a suicidal ramming attack against the Angel's Eradicant vessels defending the shrine world of Salandraxis. Strike craft like the Silent Fury and strike cruisers such as the Blood Shrike also took part in the opening violence at Istvan III. Even smaller escorts, like the Bellicose, were lost in the same devastating explosion that destroyed the Galeras and the Clavum. As the Legion journeyed toward the siege of Terra, the frigate Bestiarius traveled among them. By then, the Conqueror had fallen under the influence of Khorne and become a hostile place for those aboard. Supplies dwindled as warriors lost themselves to mindless rages, striking at any near them. A secret plan formed, led by the mortal captain Ladara Saren and the destroyer Sergeant Skane, to flee to the Bestiarius when the fleet next exited the warp. Yet Saren betrayed the plot to her legion, for she had never intended to abandon her command, and the Conqueror destroyed the escapees' shuttles. Elsewhere, transports like the Cardox served their purpose, and vast space hulks carried the Legion across ages. The Devourer of Stars bore the Daemon Primarch Angron to Armageddon during the First War for Armageddon. The Scion of Grief drifted as a World Eater's space hulk until an elite Salamander's kill team boarded it, seeking to end its menace by overloading its plasma reactors. Thus the fleet endured in fragments and memory, its vessels scattered, destroyed, or transformed, yet always bound to the same current of unrelenting war. In the long arc of the Imperium's history, few tales burn as fiercely as that of the 12th Legion. Born as the warhounds beneath the gaze of the Emperor of Mankind, they were shaped for conquest without mercy, their red hound badge a promise of annihilation. With the coming of Angron, that promise became something darker. The butcher's nails, the decimations, the massacres from Ghenna to Nuceria, and the Night of the Wolf carved their fate in blood long before open rebellion began. When the Horus Heresy erupted, the World Eaters did not hesitate. From Istvan to the siege of Terra, their chain axes sang in fratricide and fury. Angron's apotheosis sealed what had long been unfolding, a legion no longer merely savage, but damned. In the ages that followed, through Skelethrax, the Dominion of Fire, Armageddon, and into the era Indomitus. They fractured, reunited, were banished, and returned, again and again, as relentless as the tide of the warp itself. Now, beneath the shadow of the Great Rift, with Angron's presence bound to cycles of banishment and return, the World Eaters endure as scattered warbands bound by blood and wrath. Their path has never been one of quiet surrender or careful rule. It is a path of skulls, of burning worlds, and of a hunger that has outlived empires. And as the great game turns without end, the galaxy remembers what it means when the Red Hound is unleashed.